My name is Captain Nightwhisper, and tonight, we're heading into a story that begins with a disappearance and ends with a question no unit ever wants to ask. If a lost soldier's GPS is moving, who or what is carrying it? This happened at a remote mountain training sector, the kind of place where radios crackle even on clear nights, and GPS signals bounce off the ridgelines like trapped voices. A 4-man patrol went out on routine recon. 3 returned on schedule. The 4th, private lane, did not. At first, command expected the usual. A twisted ankle, a bad step, maybe a radio battery failure. Search teams were being prepared. Helicopters were standing by. Everyone thought they'd find him curled up somewhere cold, but alive. Then, exactly 46 minutes after he disappeared from the squad's visual, Lane's GPS signal pinged again. Not stationary, not buried, not broken. It was moving. And it was moving too smoothly, too directly, too fast for an injured man in the mountains. Search teams followed the signal, only to find drags in the snow, footprints that didn't match human stride lengths, and a narrow path where trees seemed pushed aside from the inside. The GPS tracker finally stopped in a valley the soldiers called the Hollow, a place they didn't train in, a place locals refused to camp near, a place search dogs wouldn't go. When the team found the GPS unit, it was lying on top of untouched snow, no tracks around it, as if it had simply appeared there, like it was placed. And the strangest part? Thermal footage from that night shows something else moving in the tree line. Something tall, something fast, something that didn't leave heat, but left a shadow. Tonight, I'll tell you what they found in the Silent Valley, what they saw circling them just beyond the light, and what happened when they finally realized Lane wasn't the only one missing. This is the story of the soldier who vanished, and the signal that came back without him. On the maps, it was just Sector H12. On the whiteboard in the TOC, it was the shelf. But out in the barracks, when the lights went low and the card game slowed down and guys got honest for a second, they called it what it really felt like, the mouth. Because that stretch of mountains didn't just swallow sound, it swallowed signals. You could be standing on a ridgeline, full bars on your handset, crystal clear view, all the way to the horizon, and still watch your Jeep blink from accurate to within 3 meters to searching for satellites, like someone upstairs had flipped a switch. Officially, it was a training environment with complex terrain and electronic interference. Unofficially, it was the place where compasses spun wrong, radio checks came back with half words missing, and men walking point sometimes stopped mid-stride and said, "Did you hear that?" And no one else had. Sergeant Mason Cole had been at Ridgepoint Training Facility for 19 months, long enough to see 3 rotations of units cycle through, long enough to know which ghost stories were just boredom, and which ones men told because they were still trying to talk themselves out of believing them. He didn't like H12, too many lost GPS tracks, too many glitched position reports, too many patrols coming back with the same vague description. It felt like something was walking next to us, just off the trail. Every time I turned to look, nothing, but my headset picked up breathing that wasn't ours. Still, the Army didn't shut down training lanes just because a valley felt wrong. They just wrote thicker safety memos. On a Tuesday, in that gray space where afternoon was becoming evening, a 4-man recon team stepped off into H12 for a night navigation exercise. Their call sign was Raven 3, Staff Sergeant Blake in the lead. Behind him, Private Lane, Private Torres, and Specialist Ree on tail end Charlie. They all wore full kit, nods on their helmets, GPS trackers secured to their plate carriers, thumb-sized black units that pinged their position back to Ridgepoint every 30 seconds. Raven 3, this is Ridgepoint Actual, came the call as they passed the last radio repeater. Confirm entry into H12, Blake answered, voice steady. Ridge Point, this is Raven 3. We're crossing phase line Echo now. 4 packs, all systems green. Copy, Ridge Point replied. Remember the rules. No running, no hero moves, stay on the route markers. Be back before I finish this terrible coffee. Lane glanced up at the sky as they moved into the shadow of the first ridge. Cloud cover was rolling in fast. No stars, no moon, just the kind of dark that liked to keep things to itself. He tapped his GPS out of habit. Little green dot, coordinates updating. No big deal, he told himself. Just another training run. At 1807, Raven 3's 4 trackers were bright and clear on the Ridgepoint board. By 1846, one of them would disappear, and 46 minutes after that, it would start moving again, all on its own. The first part of the patrol was boring. Boring was good. They moved along the lower trail, checking their pace count against the map, matching faint reflective squares nailed into trees to the grid squares marked on their forearm. Checkpoint 2, Blake muttered, touching the small metal tag bolted into a rock. It had a big black 2 stenciled on it and a faded warning underneath. Stay en route, no shortcuts. Feels a little dramatic for a training lane, Torres said, breathing a little harder than he wanted to. Lane grinned in the dark. Maybe they're worried we'll find the secret government monster pen. Shut up, Ree said. You say that, and the LT's gonna make us do another rep out here with no nods as punishment. They kept moving. Overhead, the trees knit tighter. The trail narrowed, skirting the edge of a low cliff. On their right, the ground dropped away into a shallow ravine choked with brush and broken stone. Blake held up a clenched fist. They halted. He tilted his head, listening. Did you hear that? He murmured. Silence. Then, faint and tinny through the trees, the echo of their own footsteps. Trees did weird things with sound out here. Everyone knew that. Probably us, Lane whispered. Sound bouncing. Blake grunted. Yeah, he said. Probably. He took another step. His boot landed on solid rock. The world dropped out from under him. Whoa! It wasn't a full cliff, just a sudden dip. A narrow, steep-sided cut that had been hidden under a mat of loose needles and leaves. Blake's foot slid. His weight went sideways. Lane grabbed for him on instinct. His hand closed on empty air. He saw Blake's silhouette tumble, rifle clattering, loose rock bouncing. Then he saw something else. For a second, not even that long, just the blink between one breath and the next, he saw an angle in the air where there shouldn't be one. A place where the darkness looked folded, like someone had taken the forest and bent it. Forms moved in that fold, long, thin, and wrong. Then the world snapped back. Blake! Torres shouted. There was a dull thud from below, a hiss of dislodged dirt, a string of very human cursing. I'm good, Blake called, voice tight with pain. Twisted, not broken. 2 meters, maybe 3. Rope me out. Lane exhaled. His heart thudded against his ribs. He stepped closer to the edge, keeping his weight centered, scanning for a stable anchor. His GPS pinged softly on his chest. Ree moved up on his other side. I've got... The ground moved. Not collapsed. Not gave way. Moved. Lane felt it in his boots first. A subtle sideways flick, like the world had been nudged an inch to the left without his permission. Then gravity got confused. He had a clear memory of the moment his body should have gone down. Instead, it went sideways. He heard Torres shout, heard Blake bark out something that might have been his name, felt the strap of his rifle snap against his shoulder. Then, for a heartbeat, there was nothing. No fall, no impact, no sensation of movement in any direction he had words for. Just a sound, like someone had snapped a wet towel across the surface of a lake. And then, cold. When Lane opened his eyes, he was lying on his back. But the sky above him wasn't the one he'd left. It was darker, wrong shade. a kind of black that drank the outlines of the trees instead of framing them. His ears rang. "Blake?" he called. No answer. "Torres? Ree?" Nothing. His radio hissed when he keyed it. No voice, just a low rushing, like distant wind funneled through a tunnel. He pushed himself up slowly. The ravine was gone. He was in a hollow he didn't recognize, ringed by trees that leaned in too close, branches knitting overhead. The air smelled stale. Old. His GPS unit blinked green on his chest. Coordinates. No fix. For the first time since he'd joined the army, Private Lane felt truly, completely alone. Back on the Ridgepoint board, at 1846, his dot went gray. "Lane's tracker just dropped," the comms tech said, voice going flat. "Signal lost." Mason Cole looked at the status screen, then at the window, at the thickening clouds over H12. "Get me Raven 3 on the net," he said. "Right now." "Raven 3, this is Ridgepoint Actual. Report status." Blake winced as Ree tightened the bandage around his ankle. He keyed his mic with one hand, keeping the other braced against the tree trunk. "Ridgepoint, Raven 3, he said. "We've had a fall. One minor injury. One unaccounted for." He didn't like saying missing yet. "Define unaccounted for," Cole said, because he had to, because checklists didn't care about gut feelings. "Lane," Blake said. "He was right on the edge, trying to get a look at my position. Ground shifted. There was I don't know, a slip. He was there, then he wasn't. No scream, no slide. 1 second in my peripheral, next second gone." Torres leaned in toward the mic. "We called," he added. "No answer, no movement, no visual. It's like he fell into a hole that doesn't make noise." Cole pinched the bridge of his nose. "Copy," he said. "Mark your current position. Do not split the team. We're spinning up a search element now." He looked at the tech. "Show me their last known." The tech zoomed in on the map. 3 bright dots clustered together near a contour line marked with tight curves, the edge of the ravine. The 4th dot, Lane's, blinked once, then faded. "It's like the unit powered off," the tech said. "Battery was full an hour ago." "Any chance he ripped it off when he fell?" Cole asked. "Maybe," the tech said. "But we'd still see a static ping at last position, at least for a bit. This just stopped." Radio traffic thickened as they spun up the QRF. Men grabbed rucks, medkits, stretchers. Pilots checked weather, cursed under their breath at the growing cell over the valley. Back in the hollow, Lane took 3 careful steps. The ground held. He tapped his GPS again, still searching. He tried the radio a second time. "Raven 3, this is Lane," he said, forcing his voice to stay level. "I think I'm off route. No visual on any of you. My angle's weird. Might have hit my head." Silence. Then, under the hiss of static, something else. A whisper. Not words, just a suggestion of shape in the noise, like someone dragging breath up the back of a throat. And it sounded almost like his name. "Ridgepoint, this is Lane," he tried, switching channels. "If you're hearing this, I think my GPS is fried. The sky's wrong out here. I need..." The static snapped, sharp as a finger flicked against his eardrum. Then it was just emptiness again. He turned in a slow circle. The trees looked the same in every direction. No trail, no markers, no glow from Ridgepoint's floodlights over the next rise. Just a sense that if he walked long enough in any direction, the world would thin. He picked a bearing and started moving. Better than standing still. Better than waiting for that whisper in his headset to figure out how to say more than his name. Back on the board at Ridgepoint, Cole watched the 3 remaining GPS dots shift slightly as Blake and the others adjusted position, calling out, looking, straining to hear any shout over the wind. Lane's dot remained absent. They swept until dark. No tracks they could trust. Winds in the valley played games with prints. No dropped gear, no broken branches. By the time the search was called off for the night, everyone was telling themselves the same thing. We'll find him in the morning. Men get lost. Men get tired. Men hunker down and wait. We'll find him in the morning. No one said what else they were thinking. If we don't, where did he go? Protocol demanded that they escalate quickly. After 90 minutes with no contact, Ridgepoint called higher. A formal missing soldier report took shape in the system. Helicopters were put on standby, dogs notified, neighboring units flagged. Couldn't he just have dropped into a dead zone? Someone asked in the TOC. The comms out there are trash. Comms, sure, Cole said. But GPS doesn't care about the ridge lines the same way. Even if his radio's dead, his tracker should still be spitting something out. The tech nodded, pale. We've had drift before, he said. A few meters error, sometimes even 50 or 60, but we've never had just nothing. Not unless the unit is physically smashed. Or shielded, someone else murmured. The word hung in the air. Shielded by what? Rock? Metal? Something that wanted him invisible? Outside, the storm built itself without asking permission. Wind picked up, funneled down the valley. Clouds thickened, bellies swollen with rain they were saving for later. The kind of pressure drop that made old scars ache and radios hiss. At 1932, the generators kicked a little as lightning spiderwebbed across a far ridge. Still no joy on Lane, Blake reported over the net. His voice sounded older than it had that afternoon. We're back at phase line echo. Visibility's going to shit. We're not equipped to search in this. Recommend we consolidate and push a full-scale search at first light. Cole hated that he was right. Copy, he said. Return to base. We'll keep trying his frequency. Lane, alone in his wrong hollow, watched a sky that didn't quite match the air he was breathing. Time got slippery. His watch said 40 minutes had passed since the fall. His body said longer. The growing tightness in his chest said too long. He tried the radio again. Silence. He almost turned it off, just to get rid of the constant soft hiss. Then, without warning, it cut. Not faded. Cut. Like someone had pinched the sound between two fingers. In the 3-second vacuum that followed, the world felt paused. Like someone up there had hit stop on a remote that controlled more than just his headset. He held his breath without meaning to. When the sound came back, it wasn't static. It was a heartbeat. Deep. Slow. Not his. Once. Twice. Then gone. Okay, he whispered to himself. Okay, Lane. You're tired. You banged your head harder than you thought. You're hearing shit. He thumbed the GPS again. The screen jittered. Just for a second, instead of coordinates, it showed no outside, and then no inside, and then no fix. On the Ridgepoint board, his dot stayed gone. Until 1932. Exactly 46 minutes after it had vanished, Lane's tracker pinged. The tech nearly spilled his coffee. Whoa! Whoa, wait, he said, leaning in. Lane just came back online. Every head in the T-Oak snapped toward the screen. The dot wasn't where it was supposed to be. It wasn't near the ravine. It wasn't drifting where a lost, injured man might crawl. It was almost 2 kilometers away, in the part of H12 where the contour lines bunched together, like they were trying to hide something between them. The hollow, someone said under their breath. Could he have moved that fast on foot? The lieutenant asked. In this terrain? Cole said. No, not unless he grew another pair of legs and a jetpack. The dot pulsed. Updated. It was moving. They watched it at first, like people watched storms on radar. Detached, analytical, looking for patterns. Lane's GPS icon slid along the digital map with unnerving smoothness. No jagged hesitations, no zigzagging like someone scrambling up and down slopes. It took the cleanest path through the terrain. The line between points looked efficient. "Is he on a vehicle?" the lieutenant asked. "No roads there," Cole said. "No trails big enough for a quad. It's rocks and scrub and bad ideas." The tech frowned. "Speed's too slow for a truck anyway," he said. "Too consistent. He's moving at about 5, maybe 6 kilometers an hour. Uphill, downhill. Doesn't change much." "Uphill should slow him," Cole said. "Downhill should speed him." "Yeah," the tech said. "I know." On the radio, Blake's team was already halfway back to Ridgepoint when the call came. "Raven 3, this is Ridgepoint," Cole said. "Be advised, we've reacquired Lane's GPS. He's moving north by northeast, deeper into H12. Coordinates as follows." He read them off. There was a pause. "That's impossible," Blake said flatly. "We've been watching that quadrant for the last hour. No movement, no light. We've shouted his name until our throats hurt. If he was hoofing it, we'd have seen something." "Tracks?" Cole asked. "Snow's too spotty to tell," Blake said. "There's patches here and there, but it's mostly rock and pine needles. You know how it is." "Yeah," Cole said. "I know." He scrubbed a hand over his face. "All right," he said. "New plan. Get back to base. Refuel. Rekit. We're sending a dedicated team after that signal. We've got eyes on a moving target. I'm not ignoring that." Blake didn't like it, but he liked the idea of leaving Lane out there even less. "Copy," he said. "Raven 3 RTB." Lane stumbled. The hollow didn't like being crossed. Every time he thought he saw a clear path, the ground leaned in a different direction. Roots grabbed at his boots. Branches snagged his sleeves. The trees were too close, their trunks angled inward like they were trying to keep something from leaving, or keep something from getting in. He stopped for a second, chest heaving. His GPS unit buzzed against his sternum. He looked down. It was glowing, not brightly, just a soft, steady pulse under the plastic, like something was breathing inside. "Okay," he said again, because talking felt less lonely than not talking. "That's not supposed to do that." He tapped the casing with a gloved finger. The buzzing stopped. The screen flickered. For a moment, instead of coordinates, it showed a tiny, stylized, man-shaped icon. It moved across a blank field, leaving no trail. Then the image zoomed out, and he realized the blank field was his own map of H12, except the ridges were in the wrong places, like someone had drawn them from memory without ever walking them. The little icon reached a point labeled with one word, in block letters: mouth. The screen went dark, then it came back. Regular, boring coordinates. Lane swallowed. Above him, something moved between the trees. He snapped his head up. Nothing, just the after image of motion in the corner of his eye. Tall and thin and close. He keyed his radio again. "Ridgepoint, Lane," he said, voice hoarse. "If you're getting this, my GPS is acting like it's drunk. I think I'm walking in circles. I need..." His own voice cut off in his headset. Then quietly, from the other ear cup, a reply. "Ridgepoint copies, Lane," it said. Except it wasn't any voice he knew. It was his, laid over something slower. "Keep walking," it said. "We're right behind you." He ripped the headset off, heart punching at his ribs. From somewhere ahead, deeper in the trees, came the faint, familiar double beep of a GPS tracker updating. Not his. Something else was carrying one. By the time the search team saddled up, it was full dark. They went anyway. 6 men, Cole among them. 2 dogs, both KIAs with more operational time than some of the privates. Every one of them wired with radios, chem lights taped to their vests, and that tight feeling behind the ribs that said this is a bad idea, and we're doing it anyway. On the board, Lane's tracker kept moving. It didn't waver, didn't stop, didn't slow. It headed straight for a depression in the terrain the old maps called Dry Hollow, and the locals called something else in a language most of the soldiers didn't speak. Rough translation, according to one interpreter, the place where things don't echo. Ridge Point to search Team 1, the Tosi called as they crossed phase line Echo. Lane's last ping put him 100 meters south of the hollow's center. Signal is still moving slowly. Repeat, slowly, not running, not sprinting. Copy, Cole said. Any sign he's trying to transmit? Negative, came the reply. Radio silent from his end. The dogs didn't like H12. Normally, they pulled at the leash, eager to work. Tonight they lagged, hackles up. Every few steps they'd stop and stare off into the trees, lips lifting just enough to show teeth. Easy, Ghost, the handler murmured, giving a reassuring tug. Come on, find the nice lost idiot so we can all go home. The forest absorbed his voice. Sound died quickly here. No echo, no bounce. As they got closer to the coordinates, the air changed. Not colder exactly, just thicker, like a room with too many people in it, all holding their breath. 50 meters, someone whispered. 30. 10. The GPS units on their chests ticked over in near unison. They stepped over a low rise and into the hollow. The trees around the small clearing leaned away, as if they didn't want to get too close. The ground was a bowl of bare earth and scattered stone. Snow clung only to the edges, refusing to cross an invisible line. In the center of the clearing, on top of a flat rock, sat Lane's GPS tracker. No footprints led to it. No footprints led away. It was just there, blinking. Contact visual on the unit, Cole said softly into his mic. No sign of Lane. Repeat, no sign of Lane. The dogs refused to enter the clearing. They dropped their haunches at the edge of the tree line and growled, low in their throats, eyes fixed on the rock. Something's wrong, the handler whispered. They don't spook like this. Cole moved forward carefully, boots scuffing the dry dirt. He picked up the tracker. It was warm. Too warm for the ambient temperature. The screen showed his own position now, centered. Just a little green triangle in an open field. No indication of where it had been the last hour. As he turned it over in his hand, the air shifted. The men felt it before they heard it. A pressure, a presence. Like the moment in a small room when someone steps in behind you and you know they're there without turning. The dogs went from a growl to a full-blown snarl, straining against their leashes. At the edge of the hollow, just beyond the beam of their flashlights, the tree line thickened. Branches knit together, shadows deepened. Shape moved inside that dark, tall, narrow, wrong-angled, like something standing just this side of a fold in the world. Anybody else see that? Somebody breathed. No lasers on it, another said. If it's a guy, he's cold, real cold. Cole slowly lowered the GPS. Ridge Point, search Team 1, he said into his mic, never taking his eyes off the tree line. We've got movement. No IFF, no heat. Recommend you get a bird warming up. Static hissed in his ear. Then, search Team 1, this is Ridge Point, the comms tech said. We don't have eyes on you. Your trackers just went weird, like you're in 3 places at once. The shape in the trees leaned. The sensation was like a tide pulling at the soft parts behind his eyes. Lane's tracker buzzed in his hand. Its screen flickered. New text scrolled sluggishly across it, like someone was typing from very far away. Inside, then outside, then open. The shadows at the edge of the clearing stepped forward. The guns came up instinctively. No one gave the order. They didn't need to. Every barrel in the clearing leveled at the same patch of darkness between 2 leaning pines. Identify yourself, Cole barked, because that was what a man did when the universe presented him with something his training didn't cover. You're in a live fire zone. This area is restricted. The dark patch didn't stop moving. It didn't speed up either. It just unrolled. As it crossed the invisible boundary of the hollow, The floodlight beams and IR illuminators skated over it and came back wrong. Everything else in the woods reflected in shades of green and gray. This thing didn't reflect at all. It absorbed. For a split second, the light seemed to sink into it, like a stone into oil. Then it took one more step, and it wasn't there anymore. It was closer. No one saw it move. It was just nearer. The dogs broke first. Ghost and Vex jerked their leashes so hard their handlers stumbled. The animals tried to bolt, not away from the clearing, but sideways, as if they'd found a gap in the world none of the men could see. "Hold them!" Cole shouted. No one fired. They should have. Later, in every retelling, that moment became the fulcrum, the point where things could have gone differently. If someone had squeezed a trigger, if someone had broken the paralysis and turned the air into noise and recoil, maybe that thin place would have slammed shut. But nothing in their heads said enemy. There were no clear lines, no recognizable silhouette, no target. Just a sense of being observed by something that didn't understand what it was doing was wrong. The sound, when it came, wasn't quite in their ears. It was behind them, inside them, like someone softly dragging a fingernail down the inner wall of their skulls. Curious, a thought that wasn't a voice said, "You left this open." Cole's hand spasmed on the GPS. On the screen, the little icon that represented Lane flickered back into existence. It wasn't stationary, it was inside their perimeter. "Back up," he said hoarsely. "Back to the trees. Now, eyes in, not out." They moved in small, sliding steps. No one turned their back on the clearing. The darkness at its center pulsed distantly, like a slow heartbeat. By the time they reached the first row of trees, the feeling of pressure eased slightly. The hollow behind them looked empty. The tracker in Cole's hand disagreed. Lane's icon toggled between two positions, the rock in the middle of the clearing and a point 30 kilometers away, then 50, then 100. "Ridgepoint, we're leaving H12, Cole said into the mic. "Repeat, we are not staying in this valley. There's something," the word he wanted slid away from him like oil. "Something else." "Wrong," he finished. The climb back to base felt shorter than it should have. Time snapped back to something like normal. By the time they crossed phase line Echo, the dogs had stopped growling. They'd started whining instead. At the gate, floodlights washed them in human color again. On the wall, a young private on watch stared down at them with uneasy eyes. "You find Lane?" he called. Cole held up the tracker. "We found this," he said, "and something found us." Behind him, in the darkness below the tree line, something tall and narrow watched them leave. It did not follow, not yet. They should have written the report and moved on. They should have tagged the whole thing as a glitch. Bad weather, electronic interference, mass misperception under stress. High Command liked those words. They were clean, easy to file. But the data wouldn't sit still. Back in the TOC, the techs pulled the logs from Lane's tracker. What they found looked less like a series of coordinates and more like a heartbeat. Every 19 seconds, during that 46-minute gap, the unit had tried to ping. Each attempt bounced once, twice, then gone. When it finally reappeared, the track didn't show a smooth path from point A to point B. It showed a string of impossible jumps, back and forth, in and out, like something was tasting H12 from different angles and deciding where it liked the flavor best. "Could it be a satellite issue?" someone asked. "Satellites don't move like that," the tech said. "And if it were that, we'd see errors across the board. This was just his unit." Cole watched the screen in silence. He wasn't a scientist. He didn't understand half the acronyms the techs tossed around when they got excited. But he understood tracks. He'd followed them in 3 different countries. He knew what it looked like when something tried to cover its trail. This felt similar. just writ on a different kind of ground. At 02:13 that night, Lane's tracker pinged again. It was on Cole's desk this time, sitting next to his half-finished mug of coffee. The little green light blinked steady. The screen, which he'd left on the generic "No Fix" page, flickered. Coordinates filled the display. He recognized them. They were inside Ridgepoint's perimeter. A second later, every motion sensor along the southern fence line tripped at once. "Movement on the south side," someone shouted over the net. "Multiple beams, multiple zones, no visual." Cole grabbed his rifle and ran. The fence loomed out of the darkness ahead, topped with concertina wire, bathed in yellow-white light from the towers. Beyond it, the trees huddled close, branches stirring in the wind. "Talk to me," he snapped as the closest tower guard swung his nods toward the tree line. I don't know what I've got, Sergeant," the kid said, voice shaking. It's like there's a shadow where there should be a gap." "English," Cole said, more gently than he felt. "Something's blocking the IR, the guard said. "But I can't see it. It's not hot, it's not cold. It's just nothing." The motion sensors kept chiming, one after another, as if something long and thin was sliding slowly along the fence, brushing every beam. Lane's tracker buzzed in Cole's pocket. He pulled it out. The screen showed a tiny, stylized icon inside the base now, right at the fence line. Then slowly, it began to move. Not around, in, 1 meter, 3, 10. "The gate's locked, right?" Cole said. "Locked and chained," the guard said. "I checked it myself." "Check it again," Cole said. By the time they did, it was too late. The chain was still looped through the bars. The padlock was still snapped shut, but the gate itself was open a few inches, like something had slipped through it sideways. Lane's tracker chimed. Its screen updated. The little icon stopped moving. It sat now in the middle of the base, right where the barracks were. No one slept well at Ridgepoint on a good night. That night, no one slept at all. They did what they could to pretend otherwise. Lights out at 23A, standard. Boots stacked, rifles racked, bodies stretched out on thin mattresses. But every ear stayed tuned to the small sounds. The creak of floorboards, the click of a door, the sigh of the heater, and underneath all that, a new sound. Footsteps, not boots, bare feet, soft, slow, not quite matching the rhythm of a human gait. The steps were a little too far apart, the pauses a little too long. In Barracks 2, Torres stared at the underside of the bunk above him and counted them as they approached. 1, 2, 3. They passed the door, stopped. Everyone in the room held their breath. Something shifted on the other side of the thin wood, like someone had leaned in close, hand on the frame, listening. Then the steps continued, down the hall, past the showers, past the rec room, toward the old storage wing no one used. Lane's tracker lay on Cole's desk. The little icon on its screen crept along a simple layout of the base the techs had uploaded as a test earlier that evening. It moved down a corridor, turned left, stopped at a door. Cole watched it, knuckles white. He didn't need the map to know which door that was. The old radio room. Ridgepoint didn't use it anymore. The main TOC had nicer equipment, newer lines, better chairs. But the old room still had its racks of gear, half-powered, lights winking in standby, waiting for someone to remember they existed. The kind of place a man could sit alone in the dark and listen to ghosts. He snatched up the tracker and his rifle at the same time. "Where are you going?" one of the junior officers asked. "To see if we have a visitor," Cole said. The hallway to the old radio room felt longer than it was. Every door he passed seemed to lean inward, listening. He forced his breathing to stay steady. At the end of the hall, the radio room door stood half open. Light spilled out, not bright, just the dim glow of idle monitors and indicators. Lane's tracker buzzed once. The screen showed the icon overlapping the room's outline. He nudged the door the rest of the way with the barrel of his rifle. "Anyone in here?" he called. Silence. He stepped inside. The room smelled like dust and old plastic. Banks of outdated equipment lined the walls. Switches, dials, screens with very faint burn-in marks. A swivel chair sat in front of the main console, turned slightly as if someone had just stood up. No one was there. Cole moved slowly, sweeping the room. Empty. He was alone. Almost. From every speaker in the room, at the edge of hearing, a low hiss flowed. Not random static. Breathing. The hair on the back of his neck lifted. He set Lane's tracker on the console. Its green light blinked. "Where are you?" he whispered. For a second, just outside the periphery of his vision, the chair wasn't empty. There was the impression of weight, of a shape, of someone sitting with hands folded, watching the doors. By the time he turned his head, it was gone. The hiss in the speakers faltered, snapped off. On the console, the old equipment screens flickered. Lines of text scrolled up on one. Ghostly green. Unit. Lane status. No body. Status. No outside status. No inside status. Carried. Then the screen went black, and all the gear clicked as if a breaker had popped somewhere deep in the walls. Lane's tracker chimed once, then died. No light. No coordinates. Nothing. Cole picked it up. It felt empty, like whatever had given it a heartbeat the last few hours had stepped away. He stood there for a long time in the quiet, listening, waiting for footsteps in the hall that never came. The official report on what happened to Private Lane is short. It says that during a training exercise in complex mountainous terrain, he was separated from his squad due to a fall and presumed dead after an exhaustive search failed to recover his remains. It notes electronic interference in H12 that complicated the operation. It mentions possible equipment malfunction in connection with his GPS track. It recommends further study of the valley's unique electromagnetic profile. It does not mention the 46-minute gap where his tracker blinked between places that don't exist on any map. The icon that moved through Ridgepoint's hallways without tripping a single physical sensor. The dogs that refused to cross into the hollow. The feeling of something tall and thin watching from the trees. The half-seen weight in the radio room chair. Or this. In the months that followed, Ridgepoint rotated in new units. Men who'd never heard Lane's name. They came, they trained, they left. But the stories in the barracks changed, slowly. They stopped talking so much about the usual things. Phantom radio calls, odd shadows, echoes that sounded like voices. They started talking about something else. About GPS units that buzzed a little when the wind shifted. About coordinates on personal hiking apps that sometimes jumped, briefly, to places inside the hollow, even when the device's owner was hundreds of miles away. About waking up at 2:13 a.m. with the sense that someone was standing at the foot of the bed, checking their position. Once, on a clear night, a new lieutenant decided he was going to debunk the whole thing. He took a spare tracker, set it on the hood of a Humvee and said, "If there's anything out there, come take a walk with this." He left it out all night. Nothing happened. The next day, he wrote it off as proof that H12 was just another overblown ghost story. A week later, during a training jump hundreds of miles away, his altimeter glitched. For exactly 46 seconds, it said he was standing still in a clearing at the heart of H12. Then it snapped back, reading his actual altitude. He laughed about it later. Mostly, Mason Cole left Ridgepoint eventually. Rotations end, orders change. You move on. He never stopped carrying a GPS watch. Not because he didn't trust maps, because some nights he'd wake up with the unshakable feeling that the floor under his bunk had shifted sideways an inch, like the world had bumped against something. On those nights, he'd check the watch. Sometimes, For just a heartbeat, the coordinates would flicker to something that made no sense at all. Zeros, letters where numbers should be, words. Once, half asleep, he swore he saw no outside, and then carried. He didn't sleep much the rest of that night. He thought about Lane, about the hollow, about the question no one ever put in a report. If a missing man's GPS is moving, and you're following it, how sure are you that what you're walking toward is still the man? Or are you just chasing the thing that's carrying what's left of him? Disappearance is one kind of fear. We understand it, we have rituals for it, missing posters, search parties, moments of silence. But there's another kind that doesn't fit so neatly into a form. When someone vanishes, and all that comes back is a signal, a blip on a screen, a coordinate, a heartbeat with no body. Private Lane fell in a place where the world folds, where inside and outside don't quite mean the same thing they do up here at the surface. Maybe he died in that first instant. Maybe he didn't. Maybe the part of him that knew his own name slipped sideways, and something else reached out and picked up what we left behind. We build systems to track our people, jeeps, radios, thermal imagers. We tell ourselves that as long as there's a dot on the map, there's hope. But what happens when something on the other side learns how to move the dot? When it figures out how to step through the thin places, holding our tools, our beacons, our little blinking lights that say, "I am here," and walks them around like bait. The men at Ridgepoint learned one thing. A signal isn't the same as a person. A coordinate isn't the same as a heartbeat. A moving dot on a screen isn't a guarantee that anything human is attached to it. So the next time you're watching a loved one's icon, crawl across a map on your phone, on a flight tracker, a rideshare app, a location share. Ask yourself, are you tracking them? Or are you just tracking where something decided to drop their signal? My name is Captain Nightwhisper. Thank you for walking through the dark with me. If you ever find yourself in a forest where your GPS suddenly starts working better than it should, maybe don't follow where it wants you to go. Because after some men disappear, the only thing that comes back is whatever picked up what they were wearing when they fell.